As Sarah settled into her economy seat, she couldn't help but notice the empty first-class cabin. She politely asked the flight attendant about an upgrade, only to be met with a dismissive glance and a curt no. The attendant's response left Sarah feeling deflated, but there was more to this passenger than met the eye. Sarah's true identity remained hidden as she quietly returned to her seat. The flight took off, and the cabin settled into its usual rhythm. But beneath the surface, an unexpected turn of events was about to unfold. What happened next would leave everyone on board stunned and spark a conversation about assumptions and prejudice in the airline industry. This real-life story of misjudgment and redemption was about to take flight in ways no one could have predicted. Sarah stepped onto the plane, her eyes drawn to the spacious first-class cabin. As she made her way down the aisle, she noticed the section was nearly empty. A seed of hope took root in her mind. Approaching the flight attendant, Sarah politely inquired about an upgrade. "Excuse me," she began, her voice gentle and respectful. "I noticed that first class has quite a few empty seats. Would it be possible to purchase an upgrade for this flight?" The flight attendant, a woman in her mid-40s with a name tag that read Lisa, barely glanced up from her clipboard. "Sorry, those seats are reserved for our platinum members," she said, her tone dismissive. Sarah felt a familiar pang in her chest. The attendant's attitude and lack of eye contact were subtle yet unmistakable signs of the microaggressions people of color frequently face. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that this was, unfortunately, not an uncommon occurrence. As she settled into her economy seat, Sarah wrestled with an internal dilemma. She could easily reveal her true identity as a renowned civil rights lawyer, but would that really address the underlying issue? She thought about the countless individuals who face similar treatment every day, but lacked the means to challenge it. As the other passengers boarded, Sarah noticed a few curious glances in her direction. A young woman 2 rows ahead did a double take, her eyes widening in recognition. Sarah offered a small, knowing smile, but placed a finger to her lips in a gentle plea for discretion. The flight attendant, Lisa, passed by Sarah's row, pointedly avoiding eye contact. Sarah couldn't help but wonder what assumptions had led to such treatment. Was it her skin color, her casual attire, or perhaps a combination of factors that had triggered unconscious biases? As the plane began to taxi, Sarah's resolve strengthened. She decided that this incident could serve a greater purpose. She pulled out her notebook and began jotting down ideas for her next public speaking engagement, addressing the pervasive issue of bias in customer service and beyond. The plane lifted off, carrying with it the unresolved tension of the earlier interaction. As the seatbelt sign dinged off, Sarah settled in for the flight, her mind already formulating a plan to turn this negative experience into a catalyst for positive change. Little did Lisa know, her dismissive attitude towards this seemingly ordinary passenger was about to spark a chain of events that would ripple far beyond the confines of this aircraft. As the plane climbed higher into the sky, the stage was set for a confrontation that would challenge perceptions, expose biases, and potentially transform lives. The plane reached cruising altitude, but turbulence was brewing inside the aircraft. Lisa's decision to deny an upgrade was about to collide with years of ingrained habits. How would this veteran flight attendant navigate the storm of self-reflection that lay ahead? Lisa moved through the cabin with practiced efficiency, her crisp uniform a symbol of her long career in the skies. She prided herself on handling any situation with calm professionalism, but something about her interaction with Sarah left her feeling unsettled. As she arranged magazines in the seat pockets, her mind wandered to her past experiences and the limited diversity she had encountered growing up. As Lisa continued her pre-flight routine, she found herself justifying her treatment of Sarah. "I was just following protocol," she thought. "First-class upgrades are for platinum members." But a nagging voice in the back of her mind whispered that there was more to it than that. Why hadn't she taken a moment to check if there were any available seats? Why had she been so quick to dismiss Sarah's polite request? Lisa glanced at her watch, feeling the familiar pressure of time bearing down on her. In just 20 minutes, they would begin the drink service. She wondered how much stress and time pressure had influenced her interaction with Sarah. Recognizing that these factors often lead to quick judgments and reliance on stereotypes. As she made her way back up the aisle, Lisa's gaze fell on Sarah. Despite the earlier incident, Sarah sat calmly in her economy seat, engrossed in her notebook. There was an air of quiet dignity about her that made Lisa pause. She found herself wondering about Sarah's story, her life beyond this flight. The composed demeanor in the face of unfair treatment stirred something in Lisa, a mixture of admiration and shame. For the first time since the interaction, Lisa began to question her initial judgment. Had she been too hasty, too dismissive? The possibility that she might have acted unfairly weighed heavily on her conscience. As a flight attendant, she had always prided herself on providing excellent service to all passengers. But had she failed to live up to that standard today? The flight progressed, but Lisa couldn't shake her unease. Every time she passed Sarah's row, she felt a twinge of discomfort. The routine tasks that usually brought her comfort now felt hollow as she grappled with the implications of her actions. She found herself stealing glances at Sarah, searching for some sign of anger or resentment, but finding only quiet determination. As the plane cruised through the night sky, Lisa realized that this flight was taking her on an unexpected journey, one that would force her to confront her own biases and preconceptions. The turbulence she felt wasn't coming from the air outside, but from within. And as the hours ticked by, she knew that by the time they landed, something would have to change. Lisa's unease began to dissolve as a new energy rippled through the cabin. Hushed whispers and furtive glances created an undercurrent of excitement. Passengers craned their necks, their eyes fixed on a point near the back of the plane. Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that she was missing something crucial. As she moved through the aisle, snippets of conversation caught her ear. A woman whispered a name that sounded vaguely familiar, but Lisa couldn't quite place it. Her heart rate quickened as she tried to piece together the puzzle. The phenomenon of celebrity air travel wasn't new to Lisa. She'd seen her fair share of famous faces over the years, most of them in first class. Airlines often accommodated high-profile passengers, upgrading them to premium cabins even on sold-out flights. Lisa had always found it a bit unfair, but it was part of the job. As she continued her rounds, Lisa's mind raced. She caught fragments of excited chatter about a civil rights lawyer and a speech at the UN. The pieces started to fall into place, and a cold dread settled in her stomach. Had she just denied an upgrade to a renowned public figure? Lisa's suspicion grew with each passing minute. She remembered Sarah's composed demeanor in the face of her curt dismissal. The quiet dignity she'd observed earlier now took on a new significance. Lisa's cheeks burned with shame as she realized the magnitude of her mistake. The atmosphere in the cabin continued to shift. Passengers who had been absorbed in their own worlds now engaged in animated conversations, stealing glances towards the back. The juxtaposition of this clearly influential woman sitting in economy while first class remained half empty felt like a silent rebuke. As Lisa approached the galley, a well-dressed man stopped her. "Excuse me," he said, his voice low but insistent. "I couldn't help but notice that Sarah Johnson is seated in economy. Surely there's been some mistake." Lisa felt her professional mask slipping. I'm not sure, sir. Let me check on that for you," she managed to stammer out. The man's question hung in the air, a tangible reminder of Lisa's earlier dismissiveness. She realized with growing horror that she needed to investigate further, to confirm what she now strongly suspected. The weight of her actions pressed down on her, making each step towards the crew area feel like a monumental effort. As Lisa reached for the passenger manifest, her hands trembled slightly. She knew that whatever information she found there would force her to confront her own biases and the consequences of her hasty judgment. The realization that this routine flight had become a turning point in her career, and perhaps her life, was inescapable. With a deep breath, Lisa opened the manifest, her eyes scanning the pages for the name that had caused such a stir. As she found what she was looking for, the full impact of her earlier interaction with Sarah hit her like a physical force. Lisa knew that the next steps she took would be crucial, not just for this flight, but for her understanding of herself and her role in a world more complex than she had allowed herself to see. Lisa's fingers trembled as she opened the passenger manifest, her eyes scanning the pages with growing dread. There, in stark black and white, was the truth she had been avoiding. Sarah Johnson, civil rights attorney, and United Nations Goodwill Ambassador. The realization hit Lisa like a physical blow, her stomach twisting with shame and panic. As the full magnitude of her mistake became clear, Lisa's mind raced with potential consequences. She had denied an upgrade to a renowned public figure known for her advocacy work. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on her. A moment of unconscious bias had led her to discriminate against someone who had dedicated her life to fighting such injustices. Lisa leaned against the galley wall, trying to steady her breathing. She couldn't help but imagine the headlines. Airline denies upgrade to civil rights icon. Her 15-year career flashed before her eyes, the possibility of losing it all over one thoughtless interaction. As she grappled with her internal panic, Lisa's mind turned to the question of how to address the situation. Should she alert her supervisor, offer Sarah an immediate upgrade, or perhaps pretend she hadn't made the connection and hope the incident would blow over? Each option seemed fraught with potential pitfalls. The weight of her decision pressed down on her as she considered the broader implications. This wasn't just about saving her job or protecting the airline's reputation. It was about confronting her own biases and taking responsibility for her actions. Lisa realized that this moment could be a turning point, not just in her career, but in her personal growth as well. After what felt like an eternity but was likely only a few minutes, Lisa made her decision. She would approach Sarah directly, offer a sincere apology, and do whatever she could to make amends. It wouldn't be easy, and the outcome was far from certain, but Lisa knew it was the right thing to do. With a deep breath to steel her nerves, Lisa smoothed her uniform and began making her way down the aisle toward Sarah's seat. Each step felt heavier than the last, the eyes of curious passengers seeming to follow her progress. As she neared her destination, Lisa's heart pounded in her chest, a mix of fear and determination propelling her forward. Just a few rows away now, Lisa could see Sarah still engrossed in her notebook, unaware of the internal struggle that had been unfolding. In those final moments before the confrontation, Lisa silently vowed to use this experience as a catalyst for change, both for herself and within her profession. Whatever the outcome, she knew that this interaction would leave an indelible mark on her life and career. As Lisa approached Sarah's seat, the air crackled with tension. Lisa's heart raced as she stood before Sarah, her hands fidgeting with her uniform. "Ms. Johnson," she began softly, "I'd like to offer you an upgrade to first class." Sarah looked up from her notebook, her expression unreadable. "That's quite a change of heart. May I ask what prompted this sudden offer?" Lisa felt the weight of Sarah's gaze in the curious stares of nearby passengers. "I made a mistake earlier," Lisa admitted. "I shouldn't have dismissed your request so quickly. I'm sorry for my behavior." Sarah considered Lisa's words. "Apologies can be powerful tools for healing and growth, but they require sincerity and a commitment to change. What have you learned from this experience?" Lisa swallowed hard, aware of their audience. "I've learned that my actions have consequences beyond what I might initially realize. I made assumptions based on prejudices I didn't even know I had. I see now how harmful that can be, and I want to do better." Sarah pressed on. "And how do you plan to do better? An upgrade offer doesn't erase what happened." Lisa took a deep breath. "You're right. This isn't about an upgrade. It's about acknowledging my mistake and committing to change. I'd like to use this experience to improve, not just for myself, but for our entire crew. Would you be willing to share your perspective with our team? Your insights could help us all learn and grow." Sarah's expression softened slightly. "That's a thoughtful suggestion, Lisa. I appreciate your willingness to learn and your desire to affect change on a broader scale." The tension in the air began to dissipate, replaced by cautious optimism. Passengers exchanged glances, many nodding in approval at the resolution. "As for the upgrade," Sarah continued, "I think I'll stay here in economy. This seat has given me quite the vantage point for observing how people interact on this flight. But I would be happy to discuss further training opportunities with your team." Lisa nodded, relieved and admiring. "Thank you, Ms. Johnson. I'll make sure to follow up on that." As Lisa turned to leave, she noticed the head flight attendant watching from the front of the cabin. Lisa straightened her shoulders, ready to face whatever consequences lay ahead. Knowing that this moment had set her on a path of growth, she never could have anticipated when she started her shift. The head flight attendant's approach sent ripples of tension through the cabin. Margaret, a seasoned veteran with over 3 decades of experience, made her way down the aisle with purposeful strides. Her eyes, sharp and discerning, took in the scene before her. Lisa's nervous posture, Sarah's calm demeanor, and the curious glances of nearby passengers. "Lisa, a word please," Margaret said, her voice low but firm. She led Lisa to the galley, away from prying eyes and ears. The conversation that followed was quiet but intense, with Margaret's disappointment evident in her furrowed brow and tight-lipped expression. "This is a serious matter, Lisa," Margaret began, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Our airline has a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination of any kind. What happened here today goes against everything we stand for." Lisa felt the weight of her actions pressing down on her shoulders. She knew the potential consequences: disciplinary action, suspension, or even termination. Recent data showed that airline staff faced disciplinary action in about 15% of reported discrimination incidents, with 5% resulting in termination. As Margaret outlined the company's policies on customer complaints and anti-discrimination measures, Lisa's mind raced. She thought about her career, her colleagues, and the passengers who depended on her. The gravity of her mistake became increasingly clear with each passing moment. "I understand the severity of the situation," Lisa said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I take full responsibility for my actions, and I'm committed to making this right." Margaret's expression softened slightly at Lisa's sincerity. "That's a start," she said. "But words alone aren't enough. We'll need to address this formally when we land." As their conversation concluded, Margaret turned her attention to Sarah. With a deep breath, she approached the civil rights attorney, prepared to offer the airline's official apology and discuss any potential fallout. To everyone's surprise, Sarah's response was one of grace and understanding. She listened attentively as Margaret expressed the airline's regret over the incident, nodding thoughtfully. "I appreciate your prompt attention to this matter," Sarah said, her voice calm and measured. "While the initial interaction was disappointing, I've been impressed by the subsequent handling of the situation. This could be an excellent opportunity for growth and education." Margaret blinked, momentarily taken aback by Sarah's magnanimous response. She had prepared for anger, for threats of legal action, but not for this level of understanding. "Thank you, Ms. Johnson," Margaret said, relief evident in her voice. "We would be grateful for any insights you might be willing to share to help us improve our practices." As the flight progressed, the incident became the topic of hushed conversations among the crew. Flight attendants gathered in small groups during lulls in service, discussing what had transpired and its implications for their work. "It's a wake-up call for all of us," one crew member remarked. "We need to be more aware of our biases and how they affect our interactions with passengers." For Lisa, the journey was just beginning. As the plane cruised towards its destination, she knew that the real work of self-reflection and change lay ahead. The incident had opened her eyes to the impact of unconscious bias, and she was determined to use this experience as a catalyst for personal and professional growth. Lisa retreated to the galley, steadying herself against the counter as her colleagues gathered around with concern. Their reactions varied, from Monica's disappointed whisper about diversity training to Jake's more sympathetic perspective. Lisa's mind replayed her interaction with Sarah, a whirlwind of shame, shock, and unexpected grace. The disconnect between her self-image as fair and professional and her recent actions left her feeling adrift. "I never thought I was prejudiced," Lisa murmured, her words hanging in the air. The galley fell silent as each crew member seemed lost in their own thoughts. As the minutes passed, Lisa felt a shift within herself. The initial shock began to give way to determination. She remembered a psychology course from years ago, where she learned about the importance of self-reflection in personal growth. "I need to do more than just apologize," Lisa said, straightening her posture. "I need to show that I'm committed to doing better." Her eyes fell on the notepad used for taking drink orders, and an idea formed. With careful deliberation, she picked up a pen and began to write. "Dear Ms. Johnson," she began, her hands steady despite the emotion behind her words, "I want to express my deepest apologies for my earlier behavior." As Lisa wrote, explaining her realization and commitment to change, She felt a weight begin to lift from her shoulders. This note was a step towards making amends and becoming the person she aspired to be. The intercom announced the plane's imminent descent. Lisa folded the note carefully, tucking it into her pocket. She knew that the real work lay ahead, confronting her biases, educating herself, and advocating for change within her workplace. Glancing down the aisle towards Sarah's seat, Lisa saw the civil rights attorney gazing out the window, unaware of her profound impact. Lisa took a deep breath, preparing herself for the conversations and challenges that awaited her on the ground. As the plane began its descent, Lisa realized this was not an ending, but a beginning. The story that had unfolded at 30,000 feet was far from over. Its true impact was yet to be felt, both in her life and in the lives of those she would encounter in the future. The plane touched down with a gentle thud, jolting passengers from their reverie. As the aircraft taxied to the gate, a palpable buzz of excitement filled the cabin. Whispers and murmurs grew louder as more passengers recognized Sarah Johnson, the renowned civil rights attorney sitting in economy class. Lisa stood near the front of the plane, her heart racing as she watched passengers gather their belongings. The realization that Sarah's true identity was now known to everyone on board filled her with a mix of dread and anticipation. She clutched the handwritten note in her pocket, unsure if she would have the courage to deliver it. As passengers began to file out, many paused to shake Sarah's hand or request a quick selfie. The attorney graciously obliged, her warm smile and composed demeanor a stark contrast to the earlier tension. Lisa couldn't help but marvel at Sarah's poise in the face of such attention. To her surprise, Sarah began making her way towards her, navigating the narrow aisle with purpose. Lisa braced herself for the confrontation she felt was inevitable. Would Sarah demand to speak to a supervisor? Threaten legal action? The possibilities raced through Lisa's mind as Sarah approached. "Excuse me, Lisa," Sarah said, her voice calm and measured. "I wanted to speak with you before I left." Lisa swallowed hard, her throat suddenly dry. "Of course, Miss Johnson. I have something for you as well." With trembling hands, she pulled out the carefully folded note. Sarah accepted the note with a small nod, but didn't open it immediately. Instead, she fixed Lisa with a penetrating gaze. "I want you to know that I see the effort you've made to rectify the situation. It takes courage to admit one's mistakes and strive to do better." Lisa blinked, caught off guard by Sarah's unexpected response. Thank you. I'm truly sorry for my earlier behavior. It was unacceptable, and I'm committed to learning from this experience." A small smile played at the corners of Sarah's mouth. "That's all any of us can do. Learn and grow. I'd like to propose something. Instead of letting this incident become another story of outrage, why don't we use it as an opportunity for education and positive change?" Lisa's eyes widened in surprise. I'd be honored to be part of that, Ms. Johnson. What did you have in mind?" As Sarah outlined her idea for a collaborative effort to address unconscious bias in the airline industry, Lisa felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The conversation that had begun with tension and fear was transforming into something hopeful and constructive. As the last passenger disembarked, leaving Lisa and Sarah alone in the cabin, both women knew that this was just the beginning. The incident that had unfolded at 30,000 feet was about to take on a life of its own, its impact reaching far beyond the confines of this single flight. The real work of accountability, education, and systemic change lay ahead, promising to challenge and transform not just Lisa and Sarah, but an entire industry. Sarah and Lisa found a quiet corner away from the bustling gate area, where curious eyes of passengers and airline staff followed them. In this bubble of privacy, Sarah's calm demeanor contrasted with Lisa's nervous energy as they settled into their impromptu meeting. Sarah shared her experiences with discrimination, her voice steady but tinged with weariness. She spoke of being overlooked for promotions and subjected to random security checks at airports. As she listened, Lisa felt a growing discomfort, recognizing similar situations where she had made assumptions. "These microaggressions accumulate over time, wearing you down," Sarah explained, her eyes meeting Lisa's. Lisa's earlier defensiveness gave way to genuine curiosity. She asked questions, seeking to understand Sarah's perspective more deeply. As the conversation progressed, Lisa began to confront her own biases. "I never thought of myself as prejudiced," Lisa admitted quietly. "But hearing your experiences, I'm starting to see how I've contributed to the problem." Sarah nodded understandingly. Recognizing our own biases is often the hardest part, but it's also the first step towards change. Their honest dialogue continued, with Lisa sharing her own background and limited exposure to diversity. Sarah listened attentively, offering insights and gentle challenges to Lisa's assumptions. Around them, other airline staff and passengers pretended not to watch, stealing glances at the unlikely pair deep in conversation. The earlier tension had transformed into a palpable sense of possibility. As their discussion wound down, a mutual understanding began to form between Sarah and Lisa. The flight attendant felt a shift within herself, a new awareness that would influence her future interactions. "Thank you for sharing your experiences with me," Lisa said, her voice filled with genuine gratitude. "I know I have a lot more to learn, but this conversation has opened my eyes." Sarah smiled warmly. "When we take the time to truly listen to each other, we can bridge divides that once seemed insurmountable." As they prepared to part ways, Lisa noticed a small group of people nearby, smartphones in hand. The realization that their conversation might not have been as private as they thought sent a jolt of anxiety through her. Sarah, noticing Lisa's sudden discomfort, followed her gaze. "It seems our chat has attracted some attention," Sarah observed. "Are you ready for what comes next?" Lisa took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. "I'm not sure, but I know it's important. If sharing our experience can help create positive change, then I'm willing to face whatever comes." As they walked back towards the main concourse, the buzz of conversation around them grew louder. Snippets of their interaction had already made their way onto social media, and the incident was beginning to attract media attention. The story that had begun on a routine flight was about to challenge not just Lisa and Sarah, but an entire industry to confront long-standing issues of bias and discrimination. As Sarah and Lisa parted ways at the airport, neither could have predicted the storm that was about to erupt. Within hours, snippets of their conversation had found their way onto social media, sparking a frenzy of activity across various platforms. The hashtag #airline discrimination began trending, with users sharing their own experiences of bias in air travel. The airline's public relations team scrambled to respond as the story gained traction. They found themselves caught between mounting public pressure for accountability and the need to protect their brand image. Debates raged online, with commentators dissecting every aspect of the incident and its broader implications for systemic racism in the airline industry. Social media's role in amplifying the discussion was undeniable. What had begun as a personal interaction between two individuals now served as a focal point for a much larger conversation about discrimination and corporate responsibility. Tweets and posts multiplied exponentially, each one adding fuel to the growing fire of public outrage. Behind closed doors, the airline's executives huddled in emergency meetings, strategizing their response. They were acutely aware of the potential fallout, considering recent consumer trends regarding corporate social responsibility. As the pressure mounted, the airline announced plans for a press conference to address the situation. Speculation ran rampant about what their statement would entail. Would they offer a mere apology or commit to concrete actions to combat discrimination within their organization? Just as the anticipation reached a fever pitch, an unexpected development shifted the narrative. Sarah Johnson, the civil rights attorney at the center of the storm, released a statement of her own. Instead of condemning the airline outright, she called for a collaborative approach to addressing the issue of bias in the industry. While the incident was undoubtedly painful, it has opened the door for a crucial conversation, Sarah's statement read. "I've had productive discussions with the flight attendant involved in airline management. I believe there's a genuine desire for change, and I'm committed to working with them to develop meaningful anti-bias training and policies." Her measured response caught many off guard, tempering some of the online vitriol and redirecting the conversation towards constructive solutions. It also presented the airline with an opportunity to reframe their approach to the crisis. As news of Sarah's statement spread, the tone of the public discourse began to shift. While many still expressed anger and frustration, others praised Sarah's willingness to engage in dialogue and push for systemic change. The incident that had threatened to become a public relations disaster for the airline was transforming into a catalyst for broader conversations about diversity, inclusion, and corporate responsibility. The airline's subsequent press conference, held jointly with Sarah Johnson, struck a tone of humility and commitment to change. They announced a comprehensive review of their training programs and policies, with Sarah serving as a special advisor to ensure meaningful reforms were implemented. As the dust began to settle, it became clear that the impact of this incident would extend far beyond a single flight or even a single airline. The conversations it had sparked were reverberating throughout the industry and beyond, challenging long-held assumptions and pushing for a more inclusive future in air travel and beyond. While public attention focused on the viral story, a different kind of storm was brewing in the airline's boardroom. The executives knew that their next move could either salvage their reputation or sink the company. Amanda Reeves, the CEO, sat at the head of the long mahogany table, her face a mask of concern as she surveyed her team. The tension in the room was palpable, with executives shifting nervously in their seats. Amanda's voice was steady despite the gravity of the situation. "We need to address this head-on," she began. "This is about systemic issues that have plagued our industry for far too long." Her words were met with a mix of nods and furrowed brows. As the meeting progressed, Amanda's mind wandered to the challenges that lay ahead. Implementing genuine change in a large organization was never easy, especially in an industry as complex and regulated as air travel. She thought about the resistance they would likely face from some employees and shareholders, the logistical hurdles of retraining thousands of staff members, and the potential short-term financial impact of such sweeping changes. But she also saw the potential for growth and positive transformation. Recent studies had shown that airlines with strong diversity and inclusion initiatives not only improved employee satisfaction, but also saw increases in customer loyalty and brand perception. A plan began to take shape. They would start with a comprehensive review of their hiring and promotion practices, followed by mandatory bias training for all employees. But Amanda knew they needed to go further. "We're going to create a passenger advisory board," she announced, silencing the room. "We'll invite diverse voices from our customer base, including Sarah Johnson, to help shape our policies moving forward. This is about becoming a truly inclusive airline." The boldness of the proposal left some executives stunned, while others nodded in approval. As Amanda outlined the details of their new diversity and inclusion initiative, she could see the wheels turning in her team's minds. This was a complete paradigm shift. As the meeting drew to a close, Amanda stood to address her team one final time. "I know this won't be easy," she said, her voice filled with determination. "But I believe it's the right thing to do, and it's also the smart thing to do for our business. We have the chance to set a new standard for the entire industry." With that, she dismissed the group to prepare for the upcoming press conference. As her executives filed out, Amanda took a deep breath, steeling herself for the challenges ahead. She knew that the impact of their decision would extend far beyond the airline, potentially changing the way the entire industry approached issues of diversity and inclusion. The journey ahead would be difficult, but for the first time since the crisis began, Amanda felt a glimmer of hope. Sarah Johnson received an unexpected invitation to speak at the Global Travel Diversity Conference. As she contemplated her response, she realized the opportunity to transform her personal experience into a catalyst for industry-wide change. Sarah dove into research on the impact of high-profile advocacy. She discovered that when influential figures spoke out on social issues, it could lead to a 23% increase in public awareness and a 15% rise in support for related causes. These statistics bolstered her resolve, reminding her of the potential ripple effect her words could have. In the weeks leading up to the conference, anticipation built steadily. Industry blogs buzzed with speculation about Sarah's speech, and social media lit up with hashtags like "Just Travel for All" and "Diversity in the Skies." Sarah channeled the mounting pressure into fine-tuning her message. The day of the conference arrived, and Sarah took the stage amidst a sea of expectant faces. She began by briefly recounting her experience on the flight, painting a vivid picture of the initial confrontation and the unexpected resolution. As she spoke, she could see heads nodding in recognition, some audience members wiping away tears. Sarah quickly pivoted to the broader implications, challenging the industry to look beyond surface-level diversity initiatives. We need to create a culture of genuine inclusion, where every traveler feels valued and respected, regardless of their background, she declared, her voice ringing out across the auditorium. As Sarah's speech reached its crescendo, she unveiled her most ambitious proposal yet, a new initiative called Skies for All. This comprehensive program would bring together airlines, airports, and travel organizations to implement standardized bias training, create diverse hiring practices, and establish a system for reporting and addressing discrimination in travel. The audience erupted in applause as Sarah concluded her speech. Social media exploded with reactions, and within hours, several major airlines had already pledged their support for the Skies for All initiative. As Sarah left the stage, she felt a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. She watched attendees eagerly discussing her proposals, feeling a spark of hope. The ripple effects of that one flight were spreading far and wide, promising to change the landscape of air travel for generations to come. The impact of Sarah's speech extended far beyond the conference, touching lives in unexpected ways. For Lisa, a flight attendant, it sparked a personal transformation that would ripple through her entire workplace. Lisa sat at her computer, contemplating an online diversity training course. The memory of her interaction with Sarah Johnson propelled her forward. With determination, she clicked enroll, committing to a journey of growth and education. As Lisa immersed herself in the course materials, she confronted uncomfortable truths about her own biases. Each module challenged her preconceptions, prompting her to examine her thoughts and behaviors anew. She devoted hours after her shifts to reading articles, watching videos, and engaging in online discussions with people from diverse backgrounds. Lisa's newfound knowledge began to manifest in her work. She adjusted her approach to customer service, paying closer attention to the needs of passengers from different cultures. During a flight, she noticed an elderly woman struggling with her meal tray and took extra time to assist her, explaining the menu options in a clear, patient manner. In crew meetings, Lisa started suggesting small changes to improve inclusivity. She proposed updating the in-flight announcements to use more gender-neutral language and recommended stocking a wider variety of food options to accommodate different dietary restrictions. Lisa's efforts caught the attention of her superiors. When the airline announced plans for a company-wide diversity workshop, she received an invitation to help lead one of the sessions. Nervous excitement filled her as she prepared her presentation, wondering how her colleagues would respond. The day of the workshop arrived, and Lisa stood before a room of familiar faces. As she began to speak, sharing her personal journey and the insights she had gained, she noticed a shift in the atmosphere. The initial skepticism gave way to engagement as she shared concrete examples of how her training had improved her interactions with passengers and crew members alike. By the end of the session, Lisa was heartened by the positive response. Colleagues approached her with genuine interest, asking for resources to learn more. Even those who had initially been dismissive found value in the workshop, admitting that they had gained new perspectives. As Lisa packed up her materials, a sense of accomplishment washed over her. She realized that her transformation was influencing her entire workplace. The seeds of change she had planted were taking root, promising to grow into something much larger than she had imagined. Lisa's journey was far from over, but as she left the training room, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The path ahead would have its challenges, but she was ready to face them, armed with knowledge, empathy, and an unwavering commitment to making a difference in every interaction. The incident that sparked intense public debate was forcing the aviation industry to confront long-standing issues of bias and discrimination. Across the globe, airline executives grappled with how to address the growing demand for industry-wide standards in bias prevention. Some companies saw this as an opportunity to lead, while others approached the issue cautiously, wary of potential costs and logistical challenges. At a meeting of the International Air Transport Association, representatives from major airlines debated passionately about the best way forward. The CEO of a prominent European carrier advocated for immediate action, emphasizing the importance of doing right by passengers and employees. However, the CFO of a budget airline raised concerns about the financial implications of comprehensive bias training. As discussions continued, industry analysts began to uncover promising results. Airlines that had implemented inclusive practices saw significant increases in customer satisfaction scores. One report indicated that companies with strong diversity initiatives experienced a 17% increase in customer loyalty over a 2-year period. These findings caught the attention of marketing teams across the industry, highlighting the potential benefits of embracing diversity and inclusion. The debate reached its peak at the annual Global Aviation Summit. A renowned expert on organizational behavior presented a compelling case for comprehensive anti-bias initiatives, sharing case studies and outlining a roadmap for industry-wide change. In the days that followed, major airlines began to announce new commitments to addressing bias and promoting diversity. Some pledged to overhaul their training programs, while others announced the creation of passenger advisory boards to provide input on policies and procedures. The impact of this movement extended beyond airlines. Other sectors of the travel industry, including hotel chains, cruise lines, and car rental companies, started examining their own practices and policies. It became clear that this was more than a passing trend. The travel industry was undergoing a fundamental shift towards creating a more welcoming environment for all travelers. As these changes unfolded, Lisa's personal transformation continued to inspire those around her. Her story served as a powerful reminder of the real-world impact that individual actions could have on an entire industry. The ripples of change that had started with a single interaction between a flight attendant and a passenger were now reshaping the landscape of air travel and beyond. 1 year after their fateful encounter, Sarah Johnson and Lisa Matthews met in a quiet corner of a bustling airport cafe. The air travel industry had undergone significant changes, and both women felt a mix of accomplishment and anticipation as they settled in with their coffees. Lisa's eyes sparkled as she shared her experiences over the past year. "The training programs and workshops have been challenging, but incredibly rewarding," she said, her voice filled with pride. Sarah nodded, smiling warmly. "Your growth has been inspiring, Lisa. The impact of your efforts is evident throughout the industry." She paused, her expression turning thoughtful. "But we both know there's still work to be done." Sarah produced a folder filled with statistics and reports. "The numbers are encouraging," she explained, spreading the papers across the table. "We've seen a 30% increase in diverse hires across major airlines, and customer satisfaction scores related to inclusivity have risen by 25%. Lisa studied the data intently. "That's impressive, but I can't help feeling like we've only begun to address the issue," she said, sighing softly. "Some colleagues still resist the changes, arguing that we're overcorrecting." Sarah nodded understandingly. "That's the challenge with any social movement," she said. "Maintaining momentum is often harder than starting the initial change. We're working to shift deeply ingrained mindsets." As they discussed future plans, Sarah revealed her latest project. "I'm developing a comprehensive training program for implementation across all airlines," she explained, her voice filled with excitement. "It could standardize best practices industry-wide." Lisa's eyes widened with interest. "That sounds incredible. How can I contribute?" Sarah smiled. "Your perspective is invaluable. Would you consider being a consultant on the project?" As Lisa enthusiastically agreed, both women felt a renewed sense of purpose. They knew the path ahead would be challenging, but their determination remained strong. The cafe bustled around them, a microcosm of the diverse world they were striving to make more inclusive. As Sarah and Lisa raised their coffee cups in a quiet toast to their continued collaboration, they knew their work was far from over. The story that had begun with a moment of conflict had evolved into a powerful force for change, its final chapters yet to be written. Their journey towards equality in the skies continued, but with each passing day and each small victory, they inched closer to their goal. As they parted ways, stepping back into the stream of travelers, both Sarah and Lisa carried with them the knowledge that their efforts were making a difference, one flight at a time. Sarah and Lisa's story serves as a powerful reminder of the ongoing need for change in the aviation industry. Their journey from a tense confrontation on a plane to becoming catalysts for industry-wide transformation illustrates the potential for growth when we confront our biases head-on. The impact of their experience continues to ripple through the aviation world. Airlines have implemented new training programs, revised their policies, and taken steps to create more inclusive environments for both passengers and crew members. However, the work is far from complete. Sarah and Lisa remain actively involved in advocacy efforts, speaking at industry conferences and consulting with airlines to further improve their practices. Their story has inspired others within the aviation community to speak up about their own experiences with discrimination, creating a growing movement for change. Pilot associations and flight attendant unions have incorporated diversity and inclusion initiatives into their agendas, pushing for systemic changes in hiring, promotion, and workplace culture. As we look to the future, the legacy of Sarah and Lisa's courage continues to shape the industry. Their experience has opened up crucial conversations about unconscious bias, representation, and the importance of creating truly welcoming spaces for all. While challenges remain, their story stands as a testament to the power of individual voices in driving meaningful change, reminding us that progress is possible when we stand up for what's right.